Hey everyone, and welcome. This is Karen with Naturally with Karen. I'm doing a presentation today called Intuitive Intelligences Part 3. Now, I did parts 1 and part 2, and they were to tell you a little bit about how I came into my own personal herstory or history. I just recently, just a week ago today, cut my dreadlocks off. And so my hair is finding its way back, scrunching in a little bit, letting it get healthy again, and letting it get used to not being, so tightly wound up in the dreadlocks. So let's get started. I covered remote sensing, and I talked about how you could have a remote for your television, and you could point it at the television, and even though it wasn't touching your television, it could tell your television what to do by sending a signal, right? Receiving a signal. Turning up the volume, changing the channel, adjusting the brightness, or many other things that you could do, even checking the programming on your television. Well, the same thing is true with intuitive, and I really do shun the word psychic, although I get it, because my grandmother talked about how most psychics and mediums really had a whole lot of fluff. And even though I know that we all have these abilities and that they're preloaded in us on an innate level, meaning they're in there from the time we're born, most of us were never really geared into understanding, or I like to use the word overstanding, and how to use them. So we have these little glimmers of intuitiveness, like we kind of get a sense that we're thinking about a friend, and all of a sudden the friend or our mom or our son or daughter will call us on the telephone right at the same moment we were thinking about them. We kind of have an idea that maybe we shouldn't have gone to that party Saturday night. Something didn't feel right, or we were stopped at a stoplight and something inside of us said, and I believe, that's either your ancestors, God, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, whatever it is to you, it doesn't matter. I'm not here to promote religion or politics or any of that. I want to get into today, there's other forms of intuitive intelligences that will really help you to empower what I have always called your GPS, your guidance and protection system. Because even though you may have a higher power or a creator for you, and everyone might have their own opinions, you also have a body, a mind or a brain, right? And a spirit. You are different than everyone else around you. There's something about you that's unique and different. So that's your spirit. You might call it your spirit, you might call it your soul. It doesn't really matter, okay? I like things to be as simple as possible. So, other forms, other than the remote sensing, the billet readings that I talked about, meaning I'm putting my hand behind my back, like my grandmother would do in 1965 when I was 4 years old, with a little scrap of paper, and she would write something on it and put it behind her back. And she always taught me that, of course, you can hear those that have passed on. Now, I didn't know any differently, so I just always assumed, yes, of course I can hear those that have passed on. And it was just like anything else, like you go from first grade to second grade, or, you go in and you have the doctor check you over. Families carried over very familiar rhythms and traditions and expectations. Expectations are very important when we talk about intuitive intelligences, about life, about healing. A shaman has a very developed, just like you could practice yoga for 5 or 6 years, a very developed set, many intuitive intelligences. So my examples were moving out of California at 42 years old and parlaying out one of my many abilities, certificates, as a massage therapist. And when I would start to work with the client's energy, we all know what energy work is. You might think of it as Reiki or healing touch, or any of these that are out there today where you can become credentialed, certificated, right? You can be a credentialed massage therapist. You can even be a nationally certified massage therapist. But really, the truth is, it's already loaded inside of you. You just didn't practice it. The same thing is true if I say, let's go for a walk and it's 28 degrees out today, and you just flew in from Florida and you're used to it being about 65 right now or whatever, it's much warmer. And you come here, you're going to say, whoa, I can't stay outside for more than about 3 or 4 minutes. The same thing is true with your intuitive abilities, or I like to even just say my sensing, how I sense. So when I go outside, I'm sensing all the time. I'm sensing with nature. That's what I call natural law, right? And I'm sensing the birds, the trees, the weather. So since I haven't had a television for over 30 years, for me, when I walk outside, out into nature, we have body, mind, and spirit. Spirit for me is my individuality and my getting out in nature, how I'm connecting with nature, which is, the true environment, not the man-made environments with the modems and all the smart devices and everything like that, but connecting with nature, right? So how can I connect with nature? Is it very simple for me? Do I need to always check, some kind of a smart device that will tell me, my phone looks kind of dirty, sorry, what the weather's going to be? Well, for sure, if I'm going to go take a trip or something's coming up that's pretty important, why not? Sure. But on a general day-to-day basis, for me, for many decades now, has been going outside. And that too, this going outside and then sensing it. You'll hear people still relate with you that they could go outside and they could smell the rain that was coming. They could feel that a snowstorm was coming because it produces a barometric shift, right? And people can feel it in their bones, especially if they've had injuries in the past and they've had weakness in their bones. They're going to feel more pain. Sometimes women will say, earthquakes were coming, and I always can tell because I get like a weird temple-based headache. All right. So our bodies are always giving us information. And what I've called that as a shaman over the last 34 years helping people is that your own body is communicating with you, not to you, with you. You might not have taken the time to register what's going on, but if you do take that time and you disconnect from the television, the programming, I absolutely guarantee you'll never regret it. You'll never regret not looking at the news. You'll still be well aware of what's going on around you. And if you don't know half of it, it's okay. These are all facets of this jewel or this lotus flower that take you into becoming more and more used to developing and using your intuition. You're no longer dependent on the box. And some people would go so far, my mother even did back in the 70s, called it an idiot box, right? Now, instead of being dependent on the news, dependent on the weather, dependent on always having a teacher, dependent on always looking a certain way with social conformity, I don't paint my fingernails and I don't use methyl ethyl ketone and other types of removers, which are chemicals, which are very harmful. For many, many, many years, maybe decades, I don't paint them. These I have taught are very special for helping you to get what you commonly call vitamin D. So clients are always very, very, very much surprised when I say, please don't take vitamin D in a capsule form. I don't believe in it. Your vitamins, or like Dr. Sabi said, the alphabet, the A, B, C, D's, and E's, right? And we do commonly call a lot of the citrus and the bioflavonoids and, some of the fruits that we use, like you've heard me talk about camelberry, we call that vitamin C. That's just what we've gotten used to talking about. So the better the nutrition, the less dependent you are on the boxes and the gaming and the news news and the weather channel, and my webcam is flashing in and out because of the light change. So that's what's going on. The more tuned you're going to become. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Just like as we go, in the next couple of months, I've had a great deal of family stress on a personal level, and I won't have quite as much inflammation in my body from the stress. And as we get more and more, past winter and get into spring and summer, and the weather is much more humid outside and there's more sunshine, we tend to look and feel better. As my hair is a couple of months out of, being combed out with a flea comb so harshly, a metal comb, the hair will look better. And everything is an adjustment. Okay? Learning your intuitive intelligences is an adjustment. Start to unplug from the television. Make the decision to get rid of it. Start to eat more of a plant-based diet. Start to get outside in nature a little bit more. Do a little bit more walking. Okay? Find out what supplements you might need in the zinc, the copper, the minerals. What kinds of food-based vitamin C could you use, right? So I'm going to go into a couple of other intuitive intelligences. I started to say that when I would put my hands on clients, an entire, what I called for many years, an arena would open up and I would see. It was almost like the physical eyes closed and the internal third eye or the far eye starts to open. And if I hadn't had now 16 years, February 1st coming up, of 6 to 20 hours per week for 16 years in the physical, not including the coaching that I do virtually through a video program like FaceTime or Facebook video. And many, many, many years, it was just the telephone. We didn't have those abilities to video conference like we do today so easily for anyone. But I got very practiced in not only seeing it since I was a little girl, but then people on my massage table, and I wouldn't even be thinking, there was no forethought like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to see a whole bunch of stuff on this person, or I'm going to give this person a medium reading or anything like that. In fact, I just went in there and said to myself, I'm going to go give this person a great massage. That's what they're coming in for. And sure enough, it was, I saw your mother and she kept showing me this beautiful jewel and she said this, and the person started crying because what I've noticed when I've watched other people recently on YouTube that are putting themselves out there as mediums is they're doing exactly what my grandmother showed me back in the 1960s. They know that 4 out of 5 people are prematurely dying and having diseases and suffering from predictable, sick, ill, toxic bodies. And so one look at you as you stand up, and I'm on the podium here, like they are, and I can start to tell you, oh, I see a man and a woman, and you can kind of light up a little bit, and it starts to become like hooking a fish on a line. They had pain in their legs, and they had, well, first of all, I've never once, not one time, have I ever had a medium type, and I don't like that word either, not really, insight that comes through me as an instrument, right? Like energy work should be free. You don't have to take any certification for it. You already know how to do it. Just practice it. Just develop it. Like I had been shown as a young girl. Animal communication, same thing. I lived with animals most of my entire life. Maybe a year or two I didn't. Chow chow dogs, capuchin, woolly monkeys, and spider monkeys, large parrots, Moluccan, umbrella cockatoo, African gray, double yellowhead, Amazon. I could go on, but I've rescued a lot of animals during my time, rehomed them or set them free or whatever was in the best interest, some of which lived with me. A little bit self-conscious about my hair being kind of wiry. But you learn from animal communication and you develop that. You learn by doing hands-on, laying on of hands, which is just a birthright, and you get better and better. And you learn through accepting and being in a peaceful place that's much more tuned and less constantly distracted, busy, and hooked up to devices. Now, when I was a young girl, my father had an exquisite garage with all of his tools and everything was super organized. And he had a couple of vices that were on his workbench, and he could turn the vise and put something in the vise to hold it in place. So every time I think about a device, and especially when I see people doing this just about everywhere you go, or I see women doing this, in their shirt, I don't have the big breastedness, but okay, it's like this. I just want to go, please stop doing that. Don't radiate yourself. How can you be as tuned as possible if you're constantly exposing yourself to harmful types of radiation, including mammograms? I know some people are going to get really upset about that one, but you don't check the breast with a mammogram. You're better off to check your breast by knowing yourself and using thermographies or other types of images that first do no harm, right? So if you know something does harm, even if you want to rationalize it and talk about how minimal it is, it's not. Radiation to the breast is always dangerous. Look at your mammary glands. Take a look at your anatomy. It's not really good. You want to be tuned, less distracted, less busy, simplify your life, get on a more plant-based diet, get off of the television and the gaming systems and the computer as much as you can, but watch me on YouTube, right? Being funny. Okay. So an arena will start to open up and you will be able to do what I've experienced. Instead of saying, oh, they had pain and they had this, the ancestors don't really care about that. And why do we not have billions and billions of women all talking about how connected they are? You want to know why? Is because aspects of, not entirely, aspects of types of religions have forbidden it. So why did they forbid it? Well, it was forbidden for lots of reasons that are talked about by Merlin Stone, Riane Eisler, and it's written in the Bible that you shall not divine. So since being tuned, seeing images or hearing or picking up cellular memories, who knows what all it is, right? That would be called divining, using cards in a non-fortune telling way to quickly assess your own higher self and your own inner knowing when you're confused, befuddled, stressed, overwhelmed, unclear, muddled, are an awesome tool. I pull out my cards from time to time, and I've done thousands of readings for people, and they've all come back and said, this is great. And if they start to say, well, tell me what's going to happen next week or what's going to happen at their court hearing, I say, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not a fortune teller. This is just about us getting a quick symbolic image about what's already inside of your higher mind that for some reason you can't connect with your own self right now to get your own intuition. That's all it is. Okay. So that makes it be something quite different. And still, there will be people that will disagree about whether or not we can detox, whether or not we should watch a television, whether or not we should use cards, whether or not we should do yoga, or if it's satanic or it's this or it's that. I have worked with people whose mothers in their early 20s, their mothers brought them in and told me they were demonic possessed or ill spirit possessed. And when their mothers brought them in and then they came into a session with me and I worked with them on the table and talked with them a little bit, that wasn't it at all. They had used drugs, and drugs, some of you aren't going to like me for this, are a portal to destroying and taking over your own higher, loving, empathic, connected to God self. We don't want to do them. But the same thing is true about using a lot of alcohol. I haven't used alcohol besides a drink or so. And in college, when I tried it, and I thought, no, this just doesn't feel good at all. It's a liver destroyer. And if I really want to relax and have something sparkly and bubbly, well, I'm going to go buy myself a kombucha. So, no, I haven't had a television. I've never allowed a microwave in my home. I've never, ever in my life applied sunscreen. I don't do tanning boots. I don't do finger and toenail polish. I don't really do makeup besides a little bit on my eyebrows here. So if I'm tired, if I'm worn thin, if I'm stressed out, if I haven't eaten the best, it's going to show. I don't put concealer and foundation and cover it up. Intuitive intelligences function better when you're closest to your natural self, when you're really tuned to nature, to natural life. They work better. So when I see someone who's full of makeup and false fingernails and they're saying all this, they died like this and they had this pain and they were, or they really want to tell you that they love you so much, I go, get out of here. I've been around this for almost 60 years. I know better. I'm not going to be fooled, and you shouldn't be fooled either, because you can do this for yourself. I'm not going to charge you. I never charged anyone a dime for that. I charge for my time when you need to know what to do to detoxify, what herbs you could take, what supplements might be good, how to help you read through your hair testing, ideas I might have to help you so that when you partner with your doctor, your specialist, or you don't want to use doctors, that you've got a shaman or a coach to help you, because I've got decades of experience, a lot of time invested, a lot of money invested, thousands of hours with people. So I've seen a lot. Experience accounts for a lot. So one of the other things that my grandmother had me do with the billet reading, we used a board. We did use the cards. We also did something which a lot of you are going to be familiar with called automatic writing. And I didn't know what it was, but we'd sit down with a pen. Just picked up a pen here. And I like these little dollar store booklets that I get all the time because I like them. They're pretty. Stuff is happening. And I like this one too. Love makes the world go round. And they're pretty to sit down too. My hair will be pretty at some point here too, and so will my eyes. They'll be pretty again. And automatic writing means that, well, if you're just sitting here on a phone call or something, sometimes I'm with a client, maybe if I doodle something and I look down, I go, it's kind of interesting that I doodled that while we're on the phone together. Or maybe I'm doodling something just before I get into a session with a client, right? Or maybe I write something out and it was kind of in a space where I wasn't really thinking about exactly what I was doing. It's just a very relaxed space. But we did a lot of automatic writing. So the last thing I want to say about intuitive intelligences are, yes, animal communication is not English. It's not having the dog or the cat write it out in English grammar and letters. It's not a direct communication like you would with another human in a code language, English, French, Spanish, Latin, whatever, right? German. Animal communication is intuitive intelligence, using the cards, hearing the ancestors. I've had names, I've had information that was absolutely crystal clear. I couldn't have had it any other way. Like the medication that I was shown with Rhea, who's one of my testimonials on my website. And I've had hundreds and hundreds. But as I got my website up, I thought, going back to people and asking them, people get kind of weird about that. I mean, you could go back and get hundreds of testimonials. So now I ask for testimonials when I work with people, because going backwards, you can't do that. And it didn't matter to me in the past. I didn't calculate that I was going to have a website. But there's lots of them. And I'm going to just talk about one story that when I was traveling in 2014, so 4 years ago, and it was that my son was going to move out to Los Angeles for about a year or more. And I wanted to bring some of his things out. So I came with my partner then, no longer, and a young gal here in town that was about 21 at the time. Invited her to come along because she'd never seen California, and that was my home. We were going to stop various places, ended up also having a really nice stay in Quartzsite, Arizona. And we pulled a trailer, figuring I was going to flip the trailer out there after I brought my son the things that could be hauled in the trailer and brought my pack, the dogs, 2 of them. And so dropped my son off at the Minneapolis airport, horrible ice and snowstorm, and we're pulling this older travel trailer behind us. And I've got, 2 other adults and the 2 big dogs in the Ford Expedition that I had at that time. And as we got, out of the colder places and all through Oklahoma, because I took a different route than the standard, Highway 35 route and across country, we went in through because I wanted to see New Mexico. And so on Christmas morning, we woke up, we had slept in the Expedition, the 3 of us and the dogs, in New Mexico, up at a truck stop that looked real safe there. And it was comfortable in there. And that's what we had for Christmas night. So we went down into town, and they wanted to get some huevos rancheros, some eggs and everything. And I connected with a woman who had been going through a lot of domestic violence and gave her a big hug. And she was like, oh, I prayed and prayed for you. And I just hugged her. And we had the best time ever. And it was just really very divine and synchronous. We went into the Love's truck stop. I want to say Albuquerque, right? Albuquerque or Santa Fe? Albuquerque, I think it was. Can't remember. It's 4 years ago. And a man was working inside the Love's truck stop. Never had taken a truck stop shower in my life. They were $7, and I thought, I just really want a nice hot shower before I get back on the road to Santa Cruz. And we're aiming to be there, with a few other stops, which we did in Arizona and so forth, at least by New Year's Eve. So we did, and I couldn't get the code to work to punch into the wall thing to get in and take a shower. So I asked this man in the white coat that worked at Love's, could you, and he was in his 60s, could you give me a hand with this? I can't seem to make it work and get in. And he said, oh, sure. And as he came over and he had his back to me and he was punching in the code, I kept hearing, they kept saying Tuolumne. So I said, what is it about Tuolumne? And he looked at me kind of funny. And I mentioned to him, and I've told this story before, they keep telling me that you were going to be a police officer. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I didn't live officially in Tuolumne, but I was living right on the outskirts. And then they said, I hear, I shouldn't say they said, I hear, except for the murder. I'm like, geez, this is really uncomfortable, especially on Christmas. And I said, well, except for the murder? And he goes, yeah. He goes, but don't worry about me. He goes, I already served time and I've already just totally processed all that, and I go, oh, okay. I go, well, maybe, maybe there's another life. Who knows, right? I don't know. My grandmother believed that there were, and I guess, on many levels, I certainly can assume that there are, but I don't know for sure. So we got into Santa Cruz, and, just on occasion, things like that will come. If you want to say, they were divine messages from God, they were the angels, they were me tapping into the field. If you want to explain it on a science level, a divinity level, a God level, or whatever you're comfortable with, I know that they happened. And I've had, at almost 60, I'm 57, I've had thousands and thousands of experiences, and I'm very thankful that I had my grandmother to give me this initial guidance in the early 1960s, to believe that I had this ability, this empowerment, this guidance and protection system that not only could I turn to at any time in my life, whatever I believed, higher power, creator, the field, the universe, Allah, Buddha, Jesus, whatever, my decisions were as a college student to now, these are happening. And I'm beyond sure of them, so that I've developed the ability to communicate them, if that makes sense. I've had so many people that, whether it was the woman with the trays and trays and trays of beautiful decorated sugar cookies, and I go, this is really odd, but during your massage, I kept seeing tons and tons of trays of decorated sugar cookies. And she goes, I'm going to the pastor right after I get my massage, and I'm going to let him know I'm not working the Christmas cookie benefit event anymore for the church. I go, oh, well, that makes sense, right? I had another woman come in, and I was told, to feel right here, and I could feel a very small lump under my finger. And, and I heard this woman works in IT. And I said, you're working in a situation where there's like a lot of radiation, and it's really starting to affect you. And, so for me, this is what medical intuition is. It's not me giving you a diagnosis code. It's not me saying you have lung cancer, you have, this, you have that. And many of us that are really old school, that many, 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 maybe hundreds of generations of females in our families carried this in the sacred cup, the chalice, the female bloodline, the bloodline of the womb, the sacred yoni, whatever you want to call it, okay? But in a very simple, humble way. And of course, we knew that sometimes certain people were demonstrating a higher ability. Doesn't mean necessarily they were gifted and others are not. But I've often thought to myself, how wonderful that would be if everyone were able to live a life connected, exercising their own guidance and protection. Would our world, I know it would, our world would be more connected, more empathically. We don't have empaths. I don't feel so good when I hear that she's an empath. No, everyone has empathy. There's another word called anhedonia, or flat affect, or descriptors like flat affect, which mean that our diet has been so abrasively full of wheat and so mucousy full of dairy and goop and cheese. And cheese is like crack. It fits in the morphine receptor sites. Do the research. It builds the cyst inside of your body, inside of your brain, on your ovaries, inside of your uterus. It becomes your fibroids. It becomes your nemesis. It becomes your demon. You can't think with a loving heart if you're toxic, not to the degree that you could otherwise if you were not. Okay. So everything that I do as a shaman, providing coaching, readings, is simplified, down to earth, humble, truthful, and filled with integrity, manners, kindness, and respect. Whatever gets me angry is when people are not told the truth or sold products with the knowledge full well that they're harmful to them. And that ripples out into affecting all of us. Last intuitive intelligence that I'm going to talk about, because I'm not going to do a part 4. I don't think so. I want to talk about something really important, and something that I've never heard anyone ever, not because I'm special, but because I developed this muscle. Okay. I developed this muscle called intuitive intelligences within. And that is, the best word I can think of is symbiosis, synchrony. It's somewhere between symbiosis and synchrony. There's probably a better word for it, and you can drop it down below in the comments if you're listening and you go, I've got the word to describe what you're talking about. For years and years, I still have clients that have been coming to me for 15 years. Okay. If Carol, Elsie, Jan, Joan, Barb are coming to me every week or 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks or once a month, or you're seeing someone on a regular basis and you're connecting with them through your coherent heart field. I'm very demonstrative with my hands, especially when we're doing a video. Otherwise, it's boring, but I'm demonstrative anyway. I would be getting ready in my bathroom to go greet, let's just use a hypothetical name, Deb, okay? And all of a sudden I'm in my bathroom or I'm in my shower, and all of a sudden I feel kind of dizzy, or I have got a weird sensation in my throat. I just don't feel really well. Or all of a sudden I get a weird headache up here. I've had many different things. I get like bouts of vertigo where all of a sudden I feel, whoa, my equilibrium's off really bad. What's going on? And I didn't have it really, but when before at all. So I go over to my professional space where I rent my shop, where I've got a treatment room, and I meet people like the size of a doctor's office. And in 15 years, almost 16, I've had some that are really big and some that are smaller. I've had about 4 of them in almost 16 years. And the client comes in and I've gotten a level of, remember we talked about developing the muscle. So now I say, you're not feeling kind of dizzy by chance this morning, are you? Or, yeah. So now they know me and they'll say, I don't know how you do that, but, and I said, well, I was thinking about you. And if you'll remember in Intuitive Intelligence's number 1 or 2, I can't remember now. I think it was number 2. We talked about bilocational. All energy is bilocational. If I'm thinking about Deb and Deb's in her house getting ready for her massage and Deb's thinking about coming to the massage, connecting. Even if Deb's not thinking about coming to the massage, I'm connecting with Deb's field. When my clients would tell me, oh, I went to go to the deck to go see blankety blank medium or blankety blank psychic. Back in the day when I was a little girl, there was psychic Sylvia Brown. People talked about, was it Edward Casey, right? People talked about, on a shamanic level, the writer that was known as Carlos Castaneda. I remember reading his books a long time ago. It's kind of like my baby beginner kind of steps, right? And they would go to these events, or I would go to stop in and say hello to a woman here in Duluth, or a woman there in Santa Cruz, or a woman in San Jose, where I grew up most of my life. And I would say, let's trade. Sarah in Superior, or any of them, right? Gave a name, insights, and people aren't always comfortable with that because they might doubt themselves, or they might even feel inferior. But once you start developing this, you shouldn't feel inferior. You're going to get better and better and better. So as a client is starting to come on a regular basis, and I'm trying to talk louder because I have a family member that just kind of is not really in the background there, and I don't want that to kind of bleed into our session here. It's special to me. I want to memorialize, because so many elders that I knew, that I learned from, 70s, 80s, 90s even, are no longer here, and they never had the chance to have videos on YouTube. I want you to have the truth. Okay? So kind of like a symbiosis, a synchrony, connecting to their field is the closest thing I can think of to describe it. I'm thinking about Nancy or Deb or Susie or Elsie or Carol. And over and over and over, they'd say, yep. Or I would get a weird, like a cotton ball effect in my throat. Come to find out, it was a gal in Superior that she'd come in and she'd go, oh, I've just got this weird thing like a cotton ball in my throat. And I'd go, well, that explains it. And I'd start the session with the two of us. At the time, I was doing a steamy wonder. And I'm going to turn this for a second here. And so sure enough, hey, Zawa, somebody's on the, hi there. Okay, let me just shut this for just a second here. I'm going to end it for now because there's a lot of activity going on here at the house that I didn't expect. And I hope you've enjoyed this. And I look forward to your comments and I hope you'll subscribe. Thank you.